Hi, I'm Jill Santopolo, and you're listening to In Her Words.
Everyone has a story. Welcome to In Her Words, a podcast from women in entertainment where female creatives and allies share their stories in their own words.
This is a dedicated space centered on how to harness creativity for inspiring and impactful projects in the ever-changing landscape of entertainment.
I'm Renee Rossi.
I'm Gretchen McCourt.
And this is In Her Words, Book Nook. Hi, everyone. We're so excited about today's Spotlight series. Today, we're talking to author Jill Santopolo. Jill wrote The Light We Lost, and today she's here to talk to us about her upcoming novel, The Love We Found. The book is coming out this March, and we're so excited to sit down with her. Today, we're talking all about her characters, the story, the conclusion of her story. She's amazing, and telling her story was so important to us as both Gretchen and I are huge fans of her books. We hope you enjoyed today's podcast, and don't forget to follow us on Substack, where more of Jill's interview can be found. I am a huge fan of your books.
Oh my goodness,
Huge
thank
fan.
you so
We're
much.
so excited to talk to you.
Very rarely can I sit down and just go through an entire book and shut off my entire life. Twice you've gotten me.
Wow, I'm honored.
I literally spent my
Yes.
birthday reading The Light We Found, and it was amazing. So, and
Thank
I
you.
felt like at the end of The Light We Lost, I was waiting for what's next. I didn't want to let go of the characters.
Yeah,
I was just
so happy to have a sequel. Same with me. I read Love We Found on Sunday last week. Literally all day, never moved. The best
So
kind
a
of
gulp book. I just read a gulp book too. I read The Trouble with Anna by Rachel Griffiths. Literally, I started the audio when I was walking around doing some errands, and then I came home, switched to the print book, and finished at 1 a.m.
I love that.
Oh, I love
I'm
that.
writing it down right now. The Trouble with Anna
by Rachel Griffiths.
by
So good.
Rachel Griffiths.
What did she write? I know that name.
I think that's her first book,
Is it?
but I feel like there are other Rachel Griffiths.
I feel like Griffith wrote something borrowed, or is that right?
Emily Giffen.
Giffen. Okay, it's the G's.
Giffen.
The G's
Yeah.
threw me.
But I feel like I just saw this is not a Rachel Griffith podcast, but I feel like I just saw her maybe doing a big book tour with somebody.
She did a big event somewhere, I think, on her
Okay.
Instagram.
I know, with Elle Cosimono, maybe. Is that who it
Maybe.
was? I don't know. Anyway, back to you, Jill.
Back to you.
We like Renee said, we're huge fans, and when we got the opportunity to talk to you, we were like, yes. So we were really excited for your new book, The Love We Found, coming out. The Light We Lost was so beloved. Did you know going in you were going to write a sequel, or did it happen?
I really wasn't expecting to write a sequel at all, but I had an inkling that I might end up writing a sequel because I had given an early manuscript to one of my sisters.
Oh.
And she had asked me to come over and watch her daughter, and I did. And when she came back and her daughter was asleep, she said to me, "All right, before you leave my house, I need to know what happened next." And I was like, "Allie, I don't know." She's like, "What do you mean you don't know?"
I need the inside scoop here.
I was like, "That's where the story ends. That's all I wrote." And she was like, "No, but you must know." And I was like, "Well, not really." And she was like, "Well, could you just make it up then?" And I was like, yeah. So I sat there in her living room and made up what happened next until she was satisfied and let me go home.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
That's amazing. I love it.
It's been a long time since then.
Yeah.
But I had been talking to my editor, and she knew that I had always sort of wanted to write a sequel and do the next part of Lucy. And she had said to me, I guess a year or so ago, she's like, "I think it's time. It's time." So it was really exciting that I got to tell the rest of the story.
You cover so much in the book in terms of just the first love, and I lived through 9/11 in New York, so there was a tie there for me in terms of just what captured me right away. But her marriage to Darren, it was just you just touched on so many human aspects of life with different relationships, and it was awesome. So
I always think, and this actually really struck me when the first book came out, because it got translated into a number of languages, which was amazing. But I keep getting notes from people in different countries who speak different languages, who grew up in different ways, who are all saying to me "Oh, I really connected with Lucy and her first love, or I really connected with her relationship with Darren, or I really connected with, you know, various things in the story. And it just really reinforces to me that there is just so much that humans have in common, no matter where you live or, you know, what language you speak or anything like that. And I feel like that's a little bit, you know, what you were almost responding to, is that like there's
a
just
little bit of
human
everybody. There's a human
element.
element. Yeah. 100%.
And the way you write her, Lucy and Darren, is such a beautiful relationship, because we don't get to see that very often. We don't get to see that you know, people come together, they split apart for a million different reasons, but they, you know, can still care for each other and put other things above themselves. I think that I love Lucy's, sometimes she's selfish, and sometimes in other aspects she's so completely not selfish. And again, that's just like such a human side of her. I love that she's so multidimensional.
Yeah, her relationship with Darren was really important to me, to sort of hit that sort of balance of they maybe weren't meant to be together, but they still really respect and care about each other, and they want to be partners as far as their kids are concerned, and are sort of maintaining that relationship for their kids too, but also for themselves. You know, they really are important to each other.
Well, it's also, I think that what was interesting is how you brought in his new wife, you know, in terms of she's struggling with similar things that Lucy struggled with him. So it's almost his human flaws that are consistent in relationships, or his blindness and his selfishness that kind of came through as well. That, you know, sometimes it's not about it, it is the person, right? And what we inherently have as our own flaws, you know, and how he approached it. How you brought the love story to life and made it was almost circuitous in terms of her and her newfound love and bringing that together. And I thought it was just so beautiful how you imagined, you know, this island off of Sicily.
You know, I went there.
Did you?
You did not.
Yeah, I did.
Oh my God. Did you go there for research, or were you there on vacation and like this inspired the book?
No, I went there for research. My husband's family is from Italy, so you know, we've been there a bunch to visit family, and we love it there. And I had been reading about Lampedusa as the sort of gateway for so many refugees to Europe. And then I had also read about Lampedusa as like the must visit summer island of, you know, pleasure. And I was just like, what an interesting place this must be. And I knew that, you know, because of what Gabe had covered as a journalist in the previous book, there was a huge, real, like, tragic event in Lampedusa about a refugee ship that had caught fire offshore. And it happened in, I think, 2013. And I thought that's actually something that Gabe would have covered before he died. So I thought, well, that would be like, if Lucy's going to follow his path and learn things about him that she hadn't known before, that it would be really interesting to have her sort of follow his path there. So when we were visiting family last year, my husband and my daughter and I all went to Lampedusa, and we had an incredible time learning about the island, but also learning about, they have this, what they call the Red Cross hotspot. And it's where all of these people who are, you know, trying to get to Europe for a better life come through, and then go to Palermo, and from Palermo go to mainland Europe. And the island, sometimes there are more refugees on the island than actual people who live on the island. And a lot of the people there are often just bringing like clothes or toys or anything that they can when you know, a lot of people are coming off of a ship, boat. And they have this amazing children's library there, where they have a huge collection of what they call silent books. I think we might call them wordless picture books. But they said, because you don't need to know any specific language to read and enjoy these books. So I thought that was super cool
Beautiful.
too.
Yeah. When did you, as you said before, you didn't really know it was supposed to have a sequel. Like what inspired, did you know that when did you know this is the path that you were going to go in terms of bringing Lucy back and exploring Gabe and, you know,
I
and
mean,
going to this beautiful place in Italy?
I think relatively recently I made the definitive decision because I had always thought if I wrote a sequel, maybe I would write Darren and his new wife story.
Oh,
And,
interesting.
Lucy would be a sort of tangential character there, but not the focal point. But when I was talking about it with my editor, she was like, I think people really want to know what happened to Lucy. Like, what is Lucy's story after all of this? And, is it something that you think would be a book? And so I thought a lot about that. And I really, a lot of people said that the first book was kind of heartbreaking. And I said, I want to bring her to a better place in these books. I want her to be healed in a way that she is really not at the end of book one, because there's just no time for healing to happen. So I thought, at that point, it would be really nice to continue Lucy's story and to sort of put her forward on a journey of healing so that, where we leave her at the end of this book, she feels like she's in a good place. She's going to be okay.
Yeah.
So now I'm hearing maybe a hint of number 3 about Darren and his story.
There are so many characters in these books that I would love to do a sort of, story about. I feel like Lucy's brother Jay probably has a story in him. Her friend Julia, Kate, I don't know.
Yeah, she has great friends.
But no plans right now.
Okay.
I guess one of my other questions is, a lot of people say you write what you read, or you write what you know, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how much of yourself have you put into this in terms of, are you Lucy? Are you,
I'm not Lucy, though I do think we probably would be friends if she were real.
Yeah.
But I wrote the first book after I went through a horrible breakup.
Okay.
And I feel like a lot of the emotions that Lucy felt in that book were very similar to emotions that I had felt. So in that sense, it was like emotionally autobiographical, but plot point by plot point, not. And I think that it's similar with the second book, a little less so. But I think the way Lucy feels about her kids, the way Lucy feels about her career, the way Lucy feels about her friends, I think a lot of that is a sort of emotionally autobiographical feelings, but not the plot. Not the plot at all.
The Light We Lost obviously just took off. It was a huge, and I think it was a Reese book club pick. Yeah, how does that change? How does that change the trajectory or the plan, or that you have for, you write the book and you're so proud of it, and you hope it's a hit, and you think it'll, but then it just shoots off into the stratosphere. How does that change your approach to that book, and then subsequent, like you said, you deciding to write a sequel, and how do you approach your next projects after you've had that success and that notoriety?
A lot of trepidation. I think it was such a gift. I mean, I think Reese Witherspoon is such a gift to writers and readers. And the fact that she chose The Light We Lost changed my life. I mean, entirely changed my life. And I will forever and ever be grateful to her for that. I think what I've learned I have to do is sort of say, like, okay, that was an amazing, amazing experience. Each book has its own journey, the way sort of each person has their own journey. And my goal always is to put stories out that make people who are feeling similar things feel less alone in the world and feel like they have someone that they can relate to or talk to, in a fictional way. So I think if I tried to somehow recapture or recreate what happened with book one, I would be disappointed every time, because I think that was just such an incredibly wonderful, magical experience. So I just really try and think about writing a story that might touch someone, and then getting responses from people who have read it who say, like, oh, I was going through XYZ and this really, made me feel seen or helped me through or whatever, like that's what is so meaningful to me.
Mhm.
And that's sort of what I try to focus on, because I think if you try and focus on the book club picks and the, numbers of readers or
It
whatever,
loses the story. It loses the
yeah.
authenticity.
Do you enjoy being out and doing book tours? And I saw you have a lot of things planned. And do you doing readings and going around to different bookstores? Especially, I know you're a huge supporter of local bookstores. Is that a fun process when you have a new book?
It is super fun. It is super fun. I love meeting readers, and I love being in bookstores and meeting booksellers and supporting bookstores like that, because I think, bringing people into bookstores because there's an event there is such an exciting thing to do. Um, so, yeah, it's really fun. This is the first time that I'm traveling on a big tour like this and have a kid she's 4, so she's old enough to sort of realize what's going on. So I'm a little worried about that piece. Um, but yeah, it's just always exciting to be part of the literary community when you're sitting at home writing so quietly, and now you get to go out to the world.
When you were writing the story, do you sit down and map out the whole story almost like, and then so you know how it begins to end, or do you just free form all the way through and you get stuck and then you have to work through it? And like, how does your process work?
So I kind of think of my process as writing a book the same way you would plan a road trip. So, like, let's say you say, I'm gonna start in New York and I'm gonna end in LA. But there's a lot of routes you can take and a lot of places you can stop in between. So then I sort of will map it out and say, all right, I'm going to start in New York, I'm going to end in LA. And in between, I'm going to visit Philadelphia and, I don't know, Kansas City and Denver. Um, and then I sort of have that mapped out. And then as I'm writing, I fill in with like, okay, I'm going to stay at this restaurant and this hotel and visit this museum while I'm in this city, so that I have that initial map of where I'm going and where I'm stopping along the way. And then when I write, I just kind of flesh out the plan.
Okay.
So it's similar to that. And like, I know the beginning, I know the end, I know a few key moments in between, and then I just sort of write to those moments and around them.
Do you ever find you have, just for our aspiring writers out there, do you ever, like, how do you ground yourself in terms of not getting overfaced by story or pressures or deadlines? Like, what is your kind of takeaway in terms of how do you take that breath?
So I always look at very small pieces. I think I would overwhelm myself entirely if I was like, okay, time to write a new novel. Let's go. So I start with like, okay, today I'm going to write 2 pages, or I'm going to write 1,000
Yeah.
words, or, this week I just have to write a chapter. And then it just kind of builds on itself. It's like I'm tricking myself into writing a novel because I'm just doing the little pieces. And
It's
also,
not gulp writing.
it's not gulp writing. Exactly. There are gulp writers out there. I'm just not one of them. I also, when I was in graduate school, we had to write, I think it was 30 pages a month or something, while we were in the program. And maybe it was 20 pages. It was a lot of pages though. And my friends and I used to do what we called going on the bet, where you would say to someone, I bet you I can write 10 pages this weekend. And then at the end of the weekend, if you didn't write the 10 pages that you bet you could write, you had to donate $20 to a cause you didn't believe in.
That's so funny.
I love
so that really kept me in line, because I picked
Mhm.
a cause that I really detested to be my like punishment donation. And I was like, just the fact of giving them my money would be terrible, but also then I'd be on their lists forever. Like it'd be horrific. So I never missed a bet deadline when I was at grad school.
That's so smart because so many people are like, then you give $20 to the one that you do support. And then it's like, it's a win-win. So
Right,
the one you
right.
detest, that's so interesting.
That's
Keeps you
brilliant.
on track.
I like that.
It
I like
does.
that. Jill, what are you reading? What are you watching, or that you're loving right now? You told us the Rachel Griffiths Gulp book. What is there anything else that you're
Yes,
reading or
yes. The
watching?
Trouble with Anna, I loved. I also have Colleen. Um, oh my gosh, Oakley, is that her last name? Dan and Jane at the End of the World.
Dan and Jane.
That I said is the first book on my book tour airplane read list.
Okay.
Which Jane and Dan at the End of the World. I think Jane comes first. But that I think that I'm very excited for that one. I also have Fiona Davis's next book on my pile for my book tour read. So that's my second one for my airplane reading.
Are you a paper or a Kindle person?
I am paper or audio.
Okay.
Interesting.
I've just recently gotten into audio. I just did like Ina Garten's autobiography, and I have to say, in her voice, it was just so soothing and her inflection points.
I am a real fan of audio, and I recorded the audios for almost all of my books myself.
That's great.
Nice.
Which was a super, super fun process.
They are so easy to pick up and put down on your way versus I can't Kindles. Some people can do the electronic. I can't do it. Gretch, what are you?
I'm a paper.
Yeah,
and
I'm all
when
paper.
I used to have a commute and go to an office, I loved audiobooks. But I don't know. I'm much more of a podcast, like when I'm out walking or running, not an audiobook, but definitely I still love to hold a book. And I have them all over. My book will be everywhere. It's in the office, it's in the bedroom, it's on the couch. But I am definitely, when I get into a book, I stay up till 1:00 in the morning, and I can't put it down.
Yeah,
but that's the best feeling.
It's the best feeling when you get a book that's just like, I need to be with these people. And then you finish it and you're like, oh man, it's over. I miss them.
That's how I felt about your characters.
Yes,
I literally,
exactly.
my birthday was this week, and I sat down and I was like, I have to read this book because we were connecting this week. I literally read it cover to cover, and at the end of it, it was like 1 a.m. and I was like, I don't want to. What just happened? I'm so sad that I always delay. Like when I get to like the last like couple chapters, I'm like, I'm just gonna read one chapter or like half a chapter just to delay the ending of a book.
Mm-hmm.
It's so sad.
Or
so you have to write another one.
Yes, we need another one.
The perception, maybe the perspective from the daughter.
Yeah. Violet's book. That would be fun.
Yeah. Do you guys ever have books though that you literally have to take a break after you read it? Like I can't let any more characters into my brain. I can't start a new book or a new show. I have to kind of marinate with these people for a while.
I felt that about Jandy Nelson's book. Oh my gosh. I'm terrible. I should write these down so that I can talk about them better. She wrote I'll Give You the Sun. That's what it was called.
Oh, okay. Yep. I know that book.
Jandy Nelson's book, I'll Give You the Sun. And I felt like I finished it and I couldn't read another book for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I was like, it was so amazing.
Mm-hmm. You have to kind of sit with them. I love that feeling. Well, Jill, thank you so much. This has been wonderful to catch up with you, and we're so excited that The Love We Found is coming out to everyone. We don't get pre-readers very often, so it was a huge treat for us.
We were very excited.
Yeah.
We got very excited.
But it was so lovely to get back into those characters and to hear your voice again, and it's so nice to meet you.
So nice to meet you both as well.
We wish you so much success with this book. Adore your books. Absolutely adore them. So I can't wait to see what is in store for us, even if they're different characters. I'm sure I will fall in love with them just the same.
Maybe Courtney's story, dealing with Darren. I don't know.
I really dislike Darren.
I know.
He reminded me of so many ex-boyfriends all wrapped into one. I was just like, you got to dump this guy, Lucy.
I have 2 friends who have been having a text fight about Darren.
He's god awful. Like he's just.
Well, Courtney, his new wife, is named after my friend Courtney, who is obsessed with him, and told me after the first book that like Lucy was clearly wrong for him because he's meant for her and she wants to marry him.
Oh my
which
God,
is why I let her marry him in book 2. And then my friend Allison was reading this one and she was like, does anybody like Darren? And I was like, well, Courtney does. So she started texting Courtney and she's like, do you still like Darren?
It's so, I think that the funny part is, and one of the things that I found about Lucy and Darren's relationship is it's the one you think you want after you have the love, like your heart broken in so many pieces. And Darren was like, he's like the right guy on paper.
Yeah.
But your gut's telling you no. But she ended up marrying him.
Right.
and having kids. It wasn't like, but I don't know. The piece about Gabe, it's like you can tell that you wrote it from a perspective of like a deep love. Like there are elements in that relationship I saw in like some of my, I would say like my first or second love relationship.
Yeah, no, absolutely true. And when I was writing that first book, I sort of felt like I wanted a piece of Lucy to be satisfied by both of them, but not everything she needed.
Yeah.
And like, I hoped that with book 3, when she met Dax, she finally found someone who satisfied kind of everything she needed.
Yeah, absolutely. Where it's like one-sided, it's what's feeding your soul and what's feeding all of your other needs in addition to that, and I think that both of them did that for her. So I feel like Dax was a great character and introduction.
Yeah, he was a great character.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Why, when you did in The Love We Lost, why did you start it off around 9/11?
It's a great question. So I was at Columbia University on 9/11.
I was at NYU, so it resonated with me heavily.
Yeah, and that must have been actually an incredible experience because it was so close.
It was like, I remember every minute of that day, I could tell you where I was. Yeah. I was like walking up, watching the planes hit, and in Washington Square Park, watching them fall. Like, so that piece of your first book just like absolutely captured me.
And that exactly what you just said is in part why I did it, because I feel like in, I guess, our generation, in Lucy's generation, that was such a pivotal moment for anyone who was in college at that time, especially in New York. Mm-hmm. And I felt like she and Gabe, and the way my friends did, like that moment made you think, wow, we might not live forever. Yeah. What are we going to do with our lives? Are we going to, like, how are we going to live out whatever time we have here? And I also felt like people that you spoke to that day, relationships you had that day, like they were more intense because they were sort of formed in the crucible of September 11th. So for those two reasons, I felt like the intensity of their relationship and the sort of reevaluation of their lives and what they were going to do just sort of made sense for me for it to start there.
Yeah, no, that's so true. And I would say that the people that I always go back to, that I'm always the closest to, are the ones that I was with on 9/11, like my college crew, that we were together, and you have that. And it also made you feel, I think, differently, not shut down, but I feel like I can lean into different vulnerabilities differently. And whether that's just universal or something I experienced, I just know from 9/11. And you kind of, it's a thread throughout both of your books, but Lucy can easily go into sadness or grief very easily. And I feel like that's something from 9/11 that kind of changes because you saw so much grief in one day. It's a weird PTSD, I think.
Yeah. Well, and I think, and she's experienced, other areas of grief. And I sort of felt like that's in part why she and Dax were able to connect.
Yeah, 100%. But, well, thank you.
After hours interview.
After hours. I like that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jill. It was lovely.
Thank you. It's wonderful to meet you both.
Thank you for listening to In Her Words. We hope you'll join us at womenandentertainment.com and go to our Substack for extended interviews and behind-the-scenes access.